Okay, everybody, we are back with the note set number 2 of our Unit 1. So let's go ahead and get our notebook out. We're going to flip to our Unit 1 table of contents here. And we are ready for our second set of notes. So that's going to go on page 4. So page 4, and that note set is titled Parts of an Expression. Now that our table of contents is updated with our new set of notes, we need to flip to page 4 in our notebook. And that's on the back of a page, so I'm going to fold my notebook over. Now, depending on whether we're face-to-face or if it's online school, you're going to get this sheet of paper if you're doing it online. And if you're face-to-face with me, then I have already cut it in half for you. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that in half so that I can use it. Now that we have it cut in half, we're just going to tape it in the middle. Remember, 4 small pieces of tape and tape it in the middle. Just like this. All right. So now let's take a look. Last set of notes, we learned about what an expression actually was. It was just something that contained variables, numbers, exponents. What it did not contain was an equal sign or an inequality symbol. So when you look at this entire set of notes, there are no equal signs and there are no inequalities because we need to talk about the specific parts of an expression. So the first part that we're going to talk about are things called terms. So terms, the parts of an expression that are being added or subtracted. So when I think about the word terms and I think about an expression, I think about chunks. And I know that's weird, but and it says circle each term. So I'm going to show you the first one, how I think about it. I'm looking at this x cubed as one chunk. Then I'm adding this 2x squared to that. So that's the second chunk. And then we have this minus 5x and this minus 4. So for me, there are 4 chunks right there. So there are 4 terms for this one. So terms are the chunks that are being added or subtracted. So then the second one, we have that, this middle one, and this last one. So this one only has 3 terms. And the third one, just glancing at it, hopefully you know how many terms are there. But here we go. This one also has 3 terms. So there are 3 chunks that are being added or subtracted. And that's all there is to terms. The next thing that I want to talk about are variables. Now, in middle school, they tell you variables are the letters, and they are right. So a variable is the letter or letters used in the expression. So all it asks us to do is identify the variables. So one thing that I want to point out is a lot of times you're going to see the variable x, but it does not always have to be that letter. You could choose any letter in the alphabet that you want. Literally any letter that you want. Just math people, we typically use the letter x because that's the easiest for us. So we just have to identify what letters are being used in that expression. So this first one, the only variable is x. The second one, they're using x, but they're also using a y. So we have x and y. My pen's trying to go out on me. Okay, and this third one, the only variable that they're using is m. So variables, super simple. You just got to be able to pick out the letters that they're using. Next, coefficients. So coefficients is the number in front of the variable if there is one. Each coefficient takes the sign in front of it. If the coefficient is not written, then it is an invisible one. So there's a lot of stuff going on in that definition, but it says highlight each coefficient. So, got my highlighter. We're going to talk about each of these because it addresses several things. So it says a coefficient is the number in front of the variable. So if there's a variable, that means there is a coefficient attached with it. So when we look here, this x cubed, we don't actually see a number in front of that x cubed, but it is an understood 1. Okay? And any number that is in front of a variable, just like it says, the number in front of a variable, that is a coefficient. So this 1 is a coefficient. And then we have plus 2x squared. Well, there's an x squared, which is a variable. So this number in front is 2, and that's a positive 2. So notice that I highlighted the plus sign. That's because this is a positive 2. Okay? The next one, the next term that we look at is this minus 5x. Again, there's a variable, so there's a coefficient that goes with it. And this one is minus 5 or negative 5. And then we have this little dude, that plus 4. This one is not a coefficient because it is not a number in front of the variable. There has to be a variable in order for it to be a coefficient. So that's all there is to that one. The middle one, we have 5xy minus 4x squared minus y. So let's look at the first one. We have some variables and there's a number in front. So that is our coefficient. And that is a positive 5. I want to point that out. I should have done it over here, but this right here is a positive 5. We know it's positive because there's not a negative. And if you just have this number, it's assumed to be positive. Okay, so then let's go to this minus 4x squared. X squared, x is a variable. So this is our coefficient, but we have to highlight that negative sign in front of it because that's actually a negative 4. Then we have this one, minus y. Even though we don't technically see a number there, it is an understood 1. And so my coefficient would be negative 1. And that's it. And so the third one, you should hopefully be able to identify what the coefficients are now. Let's see. So we have 4m squared minus 7m plus 2. So 4m squared, m squared, there's a 4 in front of it. That's a positive 4, by the way. Minus 7m, there's a variable m, so we have to highlight this minus 7. And then we have plus 2. I do not need to highlight anything on that one because there is no variable. And a coefficient is a number in front of the variable. So if there is no variable, again, there is no coefficient. So there's coefficients. They're just the number in front of the variable. And then the last one is a constant. Now, a constant is a term that has no variable. In other words, it's just a number by itself. If the constant takes the sign in front of it, and we're going to box the constant if it exists. So this time, we're just going to put a box around the constant. And remember, we're looking for a number by itself. So this first one, we have x cubed plus 2x squared minus 5x plus 4. So we're looking for a number that does not have a variable. So all of those have variables, and here we go. There's our constant. Notice that it's just a number by itself. There's nothing with it. And the second statement in there, it says the constant takes the sign in front of it. So we have to make sure that we box whatever sign, whether it's positive or negative, that's in front of that number. Okay, now the second one. 5xy minus 4x squared minus y. If I look at this, all of these terms have a variable on it. So there's not a number that's just by itself. So, this one does not have a constant. So don't get tricked up by that. Sometimes there just isn't one, and that's okay. And our third one, we have 4m squared minus 7m plus 2. Remember, for a constant, we're looking for just a number by itself, and they're usually, here's a little trick, always at the end. If it's written in standard form, it's always going to be at the end. So this plus 2 right here is our constant. All right, so I'm going to go over these one more time. So terms are just the chunks that are being added together. So imagine that you're circling them and it's the chunks that are being added or subtracted together. Variables, we all know what those are. Those are just the letters that are being used. It can be any letter, keep that in mind. Coefficients, they are just the number in front of the variable, and they always take the sign of whatever is in front of that number. So make sure that when you are asked what a coefficient is, that you get that sign in front of it. And a constant is just the number by itself with no variable. They're typically at the end. Okay? Good job, guys.